one of the reasons why your party was so resoundingly rejected last November is because Democrats were gaslighting the country, saying that inflation was not a big deal, heralding Bidenomics. Not only Biden, but Kamala Harris was heralding Bidenomics, pretending that there wasn't a problem at the border. And then fundamentally, this idea that President Biden was up for another 4 years of the job, while Americans in poll after poll for year after year were saying he's too old to do the job. Your party stood against all of those things. Don't you think your party needs to acknowledge that President Biden was not up for the job of running for re-election and that this was a major mistake?
This is what happens when the truth leaks out on live TV and the left can't stop it. You guys gotta check this video out.
Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. You're the governor of an agriculture-heavy state, one of the top 5 in the country, I believe. What's your reaction to what you just heard from the agriculture secretary?
Yeah, good morning, Jake. Well, I'm stunned. Your questions were spot on. It's very clear that she talked about the people she's listening to. That is not the agricultural community. It is certainly not producers. It's not folks like Cargill, CHS, General Mills, who are out in my district. Look, this is a really precarious time, and the flippant nature that we're just trying something new here is really dangerous. These markets took us years to develop, and we have to be dependable.
So now it's dangerous to put Americans first. I find it crazy that it's only dangerous when Trump continues to do it time after time. We could go on and talking about this. He's doing it with the border. He's doing it with you, and he's doing it with our finances. Let's keep going.
Trading partners, they don't come back overnight. And everyone knows in the history of trade wars, agriculture gets hit the hardest. So I'm deeply concerned. It's our #1 export. Adding the tariffs, our 2 biggest export markets are Mexico and Canada. They're our great friends. This is just really, really terrifying. I would encourage, and I'll call the secretary, I'd encourage her to come to Minnesota and see everything that she said is not what's happening on the ground. So look, it's a precarious time.
So let me ask you, because another group you're in touch with, the United Auto Workers Union, you have a lot of that. They have supported you for years and years and years. They were excited to have you on the Democratic ticket. President Trump argues that these tariffs are needed to bring American manufacturing back and to help American workers left behind in places like Minnesota. He has support from the UAW. The UAW called his auto tariffs, quote, a long overdue shift away from a harmful economic framework that has devastated the working class. It signals a return to policies that prioritize the workers who build this country rather than the greed of ruthless corporations, unquote. I have to say, that sounds a lot like language you would use. What do you say to the UAW?
Yes.
So he doesn't really want to say anything, right? That's not the mainstream media. That's not CNN. That's not Kamala Harris trying to bash him. That's the actual truth, right? That's the United Auto Workers out there telling the truth for once. Just let that sink in. Trump is the first president to put us first, and I'm all here for it. Let's keep going. Make sure you guys hit the like button.
It is what I would use. And here's the thing that the Democrats have to figure out. Donald Trump's language around this, he's not wrong that we've had manufacturing gutted. He's not wrong that we saw an outshoring. People of my generation were told, there aren't going to be any manufacturing jobs, so you need to go to college and rack up student loan debt. The problem is Donald Trump's solution to this is not the solution. Now, UAW is right. Certain tariffs, if they're on to steel or if they're targeted correctly, do make a difference. That's not what we're dealing with here. So just last week, 650 taconite miners are laid off. Those taconite miners are mining the taconite to make the steel to build the automobiles. So I don't disagree where they're at, and I think this is the Democratic dilemma. Donald Trump talks about the things that are real in the angst of people's lives. He doesn't do a damn thing about it. In fact, he does just the opposite, and he pals around with the people that caused the problem. And we don't offer them a solution, so it looks like we're not hearing them. So I disagree with Sean Fain and UAW on this issue. I don't disagree with them on that we made decisions over the last 30 to 40 years that I don't think helped America, but this is not the solution to it. Isolating ourselves is not the solution. We need to make sure that we're focusing. And again, I would just end with this, Jake. Donald Trump has not once ever cared about workers. This is why you need to support unions across the board, support the ability.
That right there is why nobody trusts Tim Walz. He sat there for 3 or 5 minutes and said Trump was right about everything, and he's doing this right and he's doing that right. And he just flips the script. That's what they try to do with this media, man. They just want to confuse you and control your narrative and control where you vote. Let's keep going.
To have a living wage.
So we heard your former running mate Kamala Harris say she's not here to say I told you so, although obviously that's what she was saying about all the Trump chaos. We're saying, I have to say though, what does I told you so really mean here? I mean, people heard her message. They did not vote for her. She lost every battleground state. You yourself have criticized the Harris-Walz campaign for being too cautious. She may have told the American people, she may have warned the American people, but she didn't do it compellingly enough to win.
That is the absolute point. And look, when I criticize, I'm criticizing myself. I own this. I'm part of the ticket. And somebody has to come up with a strategy. I think this is exactly right. This is the thing. Look, Democrats, it was a good night in Wisconsin. I was over there. We saw that happen. Donald Trump's doing this. Just to be clear, nobody on the Democratic side is celebrating this, and those folks in the street are not celebrating that Donald Trump's making all these errors. I think what the vice president's saying is that was pretty self-evident that he was going to do that. I do think the challenge for Democrats, and this is, I think, a structural problem that's going to take a lot more thinking, why, with all of that out there, did they not think we were any better than that? And they didn't. And I'm very concerned with the folks who stayed home. And these are folks that I'll say once again, Donald Trump has identified their angst. They can't buy a house. They can't afford to get a good education. They're concerned that their economic future is so precarious it could slip out from under them. Less than half of Americans have $1,000 in savings. And I think, why was it not so compelling? It should have been a slam dunk for us to say, we're the party that cares about that. We're the party that's going to protect Social Security and Medicare. We're the party that thinks the ACA is a good start, but we need to do more on health care. And we didn't do that. So I'm concerned. Democrats do well in special elections and off-year elections, but the electorate that comes in presidential election years is different. When I was young, it was easy to know what a Democrat was. They stood with the working class and labor. Republicans were country club and for the rich. Today, you ask people, they don't. We have a 29% approval rating.
Yeah.
It doesn't help us any that Donald Trump ends up with a 25% approval rating. We have to get back to the core issues, that this is about making America prosperous and stable and innovative for everybody.
Well, what do you make of the criticism that one of the reasons why your party was so resoundingly rejected last November is because Democrats were gaslighting the country, saying that inflation was not a big deal, heralding Bidenomics. Not only Biden, but Kamala Harris was heralding Bidenomics, pretending that there wasn't a problem at the border. And then fundamentally, this idea that President Biden was up for another 4 years of the job, while Americans in poll after poll for year after year were saying he's too old to do the job. Your party stood against all of those things.
Look, Joe Biden coming in and doing COVID and being a governor through COVID did a hell of a job. But I think one of the things that we didn't do is we assumed that we said, and it was true, that we were going to have a soft landing and our economy was better than the rest of the world. Better for who? Better for the working class who was saying groceries were too expensive, as they are now and going up. They got to see us talk about things. Again, I go back to this. Don't talk about food insecurity or housing type of issues. Talk about people being hungry and wondering where they're going to live, or about their children's future, about real security. And so I think your question is spot on. I think we got intellectualized on this. I think the fact of the matter is Joe Biden did soft land the economy. He did usher us through COVID. None of us are saying we should be soft on the border, but we allow a vacuum, and Donald Trump fills it, the 800-pound gorilla, and their narrative starts to stick, and we look weak. We look weak, like we don't care. We look like look, Jake, I'm not going to say, we need to do is we need to just arrest people and ship them to El Salvador. No, we need to invest the money on border. We need to make sure that we have the judges necessary to adjudicate things faster. We need to make sure if you're going to be in this country here legally, and when you are, you're going to be uplifted, celebrated, and part of this great American tapestry. We didn't do that, and then it fills them. They'll find the example that is horrific, where you have someone who's not here legally and they commit a crime. That is horrific, but we don't do a good job of telling that.
Don't you think your party needs to acknowledge that President Biden was not up for the job of running for re-election, and that this was a major mistake by the
He made that decision.
I know, but you all went along with the idea that he was up for it, and he wasn't. And everybody saw it, and the country rejected it.
Finally, someone calls out Tim Walz, lying about the border, lying about inflation, and lying about Biden's age. For once, someone calls it out. Let's see what he has to say, guys.
Yeah, well, look, history will tell us to go back on that. That very well could be the case, Jake. What I'm concerned about is learning from those lessons. I would hope we would never do it again, make a mistake, make sure we go through and get someone. But I don't know where.
Really quick, guys, if you're still watching the video, if a snake bit you one time, do you trust to put your hand back near that snake? That's why a lot of people are switching from voting blue to voting red, because we know what we're getting into when we vote for Trump. Let's keep going.
Where it helps us going forward. I certainly am deeply concerned that Donald Trump is going to lead us down a horrific look. Thank God it's tariffs that he said. Donald Trump listens to no one. Remember, Donald Trump has statements about, well, I don't think nuclear war would be that bad. I guess we're lucky that he went after tariffs instead of that route.
Yeah.
We have an issue in this country that is going to impact us. And if there is not a loyal opposition, if there's not some soul searching on our side, if there's not reaching out to those folks who are in the streets, they're leading right now.
So quick.
Man, we're going to end the video right there. I'll just end it by telling you guys this. Whenever your enemies start agreeing with you, that's how you know you're winning. And that's exactly what's going on with Trump. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you're new. And as always, let me know what you react to. We're out.